Hello, everyone, and welcome to RecAd Savvy, the webcast from TAtech about all things online recruitment, advertising, and marketing. What we try to do for this show is assemble some of the smartest people in our space and talk about best practices, how best to leverage technology and the savvy of recruiters to help them deal with the challenge of finding top talent in today's marketplace. And our topic today is, interestingly enough, something that everybody seems to know about and we still don't do very well, and that is the online job advertisement. And I can think of no one better to share some expertise on that particular topic than my good friend Andy Hibel, the co-founder and chief operating officer of HigherEdJobs.com. Andy, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Peter. It's great to be here, and I always love getting some time with you.
Yeah, well, I feel the same way about you. So let's dive right in. But first, tell us a little bit about Andy Hibel and your site, HigherEdJobs.com.
Yeah, HigherEdJobs.com serves the academic community. It's the leading community for career topics and job postings for people to find a job and think about their careers for people who work at colleges and universities. Been around for I believe this is year 27, and we take a lot of pride in meeting the needs of both employers and candidates, so they can find a fulfilling career working for a college or university.
So, what are some of the kinds of positions that you typically see on your site?
I think what's one of the interesting parts about our site, and one of the reasons that it's so important for us to understand the entire ecosystem of recruiting, is because a lot of the positions on our site are related to a university, but you're going to find other places. We can have campus security officers that might be in law enforcement. You can have people who work in the health center who are medical professionals. Obviously, when you're talking about faculty, you have a lot of unique people who are teaching and coming at it different ways, and different types of faculty members. And on the administrative side, you can have people who are fundraisers or football coaches. So you can find just about anything of what we do on other places and other parts of the workforce, but they happen to be doing it for a college or university.
Very cool. Well, that's a fascinating portfolio, and obviously, with such a broad and diverse clientele on the job seeker side, well, and I suppose on the employer side as well, just in terms of the titles. Job postings, online recruitment advertisements are really important to success. And they've been around for years. You and I have both been in the business long enough to remember when job postings were simply newspaper advertisements repurposed on the web. There was very little difference. We've come a long ways, but there's still, I think, a fair amount of confusion about just what an online recruitment ad is. Is it a position description? Is it what we call a job posting, or is it something else altogether? So what's your take? What is an online recruitment ad, and what's its purpose?
And I think I'm going to speak as a recruiter here, but I think the first part that I want to set the kind of the tone with is I may be speaking as a recruiter, but I think we need to focus in on the coin that we're talking about. And there's two sides to this coin. There's the potential employer and the potential employee. And this coin is the coin that kind of is the spark for their relationship. And a lot of times on the candidate side, you hear a lot about how important to put a good resume out there is. And I always kind of see whatever you post, if you want to call it job posting, you want to call it whatever you want, I'll use job posting here. I always see the job posting as the other side of that coin, that the candidate looks at the job posting to decide whether or not they're going to put a resume in there. And inviting them to do that is a big part of it. And when I look at a job posting, to describe what it is, I think I've once heard it described by somebody else as, and I wish I could attribute it to who said this, is the best thing that kind of describes it is a hostage negotiation. Because what you're looking at here is a bunch of different stakeholders who have an important stake in what this posting is like. But at the end of the day, they're not the ones responsible for landing quality candidates. The recruiter is. So when you look at that, I kind of look at the three purposes. And I'm going to use an important word to me, which is a transparent look at the actual job description. You need to give the candidate some sense of that. Two, and the only thing I can think of is if you're watching a TV commercial and you have a pharmaceutical ad, you have that really short but very quick part at the end that describes all of the side effects and legal disclosures that a pharmaceutical company has to make if they want to advertise their product. Well, a job description also, or excuse me, a job posting also has that too. There are certain things that need to be in there, and we can get more into that later, but those are definitely an expanding area and not a shrinking area of what people have to do. And the third one, and I think this is the part that to me is really the most important part as a recruiter, it's an invitation on that coin. It's that relationship you're trying to spark and get a candidate interested in your position. And to me, a good job posting does all three well, and has all stakeholders happy, and leaves an invitation to the candidate that hopefully is irresistible and they want to apply.
Yeah, I think that word irresistible is incredibly important, especially in today's talent market. I mean, the jobs report just came out today from DOL, and the unemployment rate is down to 3.4%. Now, obviously, that's a general number that covers all segments of the economy. It could be different in higher education than it is in high tech, for example. But at the end of the day, it's still a pretty tough labor market. And a lot of people that employers want to hire are already employed someplace else. So an ad has to convince people to do the one thing that we humans most hate to do. That is to change, to go from the devil they know, their current employer, their current boss, their current commute, to the devil they don't know, a new boss, a new commute, a new employer. So it really does need to have all of the elements you described, but I think I'd really focus on that word irresistible, particularly in today's market.
I can't agree with you more. And I also think when we talk about the word commute, commute is a very, very relative term in today's day and age. And I think clarity on what the commute is and what the commute is not within the job posting is part of that transparency of the position. What is it that you need? What out of the person you're going to hire? And I would posit that needs to be done up front in that original posting. If you need somebody physically there every day for all hours, put it in there. You might say, well, that's going to affect the quality of the candidate I'm going to get. That's true. It is. But also for the candidate that you're going to hire, being truthful about that up front is going to set a better basis for your relationship to be more irresistible to them.
Yeah, I think it comes back to that word that gets bandied about a lot, authenticity. But it's still important for an employer to begin from the very beginning with their job posting, which is the first part of the relationship you were talking about that they're building with that candidate. It needs to be authentic, and you do that by telling the truth and being transparent. Okay, so let's dive down into the ad itself. There are obviously lots of moving parts in a good ad. But perhaps the most important is its title. I mean, a good title draws even a passive prospect in so that they will actually invest the time to read an ad, and a lousy title simply does not do that. So even if you've written a great ad, you lose the advantage there. And I think, given what I said earlier about the fact that, there are a lot of people today who are already employed, and they need to be coaxed into checking out an employment opportunity. So, what, in your view, are some of the best practices for writing a good job posting title?
I think one of the most difficult parts about answering this question is it'd be great to be able to put something out there that's so descriptive and creative and inviting that it just sums everything up. But there's a standard deviation you really have here. You need to hit in a way that kind of hits what people are used to seeing, and is reflective of the level of position that you're hiring for. With maybe there's some inflation or deflation as far as the level of the title, whether it's director, or assistant vice president, or associate vice president, or associate director. But also, it needs to really hit on what people are expecting themselves to be in. If you go too far out of that, they might not know exactly what it is. If you go too detailed into it, where it really kind of lets the job description take place, that you're going to put level 14 requisition, and you put your requisition number into the job title. I think that's the part that really, really makes things more challenging with the title. You need a good title. You need a title that really kind of is geared towards the person who you're looking for experience wise. If there is some ways to be a little bit more creative about that, that's okay. A little bit more creative shows your uniqueness, but don't go so creative on that title that you're going to lose the target candidate that you're looking for. It's hard because you're limited by what people expect as norms, and you're also limited in many instances by how much space you have to fit that title.
Yeah, we're facing the challenge of ever shortening attention spans. People don't read on the web anymore; they scan at best. And there's some research out of AppCast which found that the shorter the title, the higher the propensity for someone to click on an ad. But to your point, it's got to have enough information to at least reassure the person that they're applying for something where they have some credibility. I mean, there's always some segment of the job seeker population that's going to apply for any ad willy-nilly. But for the candidate that you really want to hire, there has to be enough information to, as you say, convey what the position is, and not use company jargon or company descriptions. I don't know a person on earth who's ever applied for a Secretary 6 position. I mean, that doesn't mean anything to them. On the other hand, to your point, using, sort of words of the moment, using a lot of slang and so forth, may connect with some people, but may entirely go over the heads of others. So there is an art to writing a good title. I wish it were pure science. It's not. There is an art. That's why it's called advertising. And, I do think that increasingly it's important to find out from your candidate pool, from your target demographic, what are the key words that are most likely to stimulate some interest on their part, to get them to pause and open that ad.
And in remembering kind of I think that's excellent advice, is to see what exactly your candidate pool is responding to. There's also a little bit of the partnership with people who need to technically approve the ad and make sure that they're okay, that maybe the title itself is longer than what you put as far as the title on the job posting. That's okay in some instances with lots of folks. In other instances, for some more conservative folks in that department, that might not be something that flies. And then I think that's something that's best negotiated internally before that ad goes up there. I don't think that's a place where you want to ask forgiveness. I think you need to make sure you're asking permission. But if your title is pretty darn long, if there's unnecessary parts of it to get people initially interested, I would consider at that point making it your best succinct shot at getting people there, and making sure you have your ducks in a row with your all of your stakeholders.
You've just touched on a subject that I think is so important. It's not directly a part of best practices for writing a great job posting, but it is, I think, an important element of effective online recruitment advertising. And that is educating your stakeholders. I mean, they don't want to be recruiters, so they don't need to get down into the weeds, but they need to know just how tight the labor market is in the particular uh, geographic area, if it's not a remote position, and in the particular career field that they're looking for. And they also need to know something about what we've just been talking about, the art of writing a title. That a long title may be appropriate if you're lining people up in an organization chart and trying to determine pay scales. But if you're doing advertising, it's an entirely different challenge. So I do think that the recruiters, particularly in today's world, have an educational mission in order to be successful at recruitment advertising.
Totally agree.
Okay, so let's say you've got a great title. Now let's talk about the actual body of the ad itself. What in your view are some of the must-haves for the content of a good job posting?
So we kind of talked about those three main areas of the posting: the transparent look into the job description, kind of the all the required disclosures, and then we talked about the invitation. And to me, the invitation by far is the most important part. You've now gotten somebody to open up that ad and look at it. First of all, congratulations. That's not so easy.
Yeah.
And two, now that you got them, what are you going to do with their time? What are you going to do to show that you are genuinely a great person to be able to engage with? And I do think it's a person. People don't work for institutions, they work for people, and they work with others. Now, yes, they work for institutions, they work for companies. That happens. But really what they see on a day-to-day basis is the people of the institution. So what makes, and we actually have a piece coming out later this month on HigherEdJobs about what makes your institution unique. It's written by Jennifer Lee Hoyt, and it's a fantastic case study into Old Dominion University and trying to separate themselves, because almost every university looks exactly the same to most people. Even to people who work in academia, you're going to try to, if you're looking at a university, associate peers or what you know, or maybe you know somebody who works there, but they look very much similar. But I think in that piece, she basically talks about leaning into what should make your university unique throughout the institution. This would be in recruiting students, culture on the campus, et cetera, et cetera. But I think that's the part where, in that invitation to come work with us, you're sharing your uniqueness. You're showing why this is a place that's passionate, in the case of academia, about teaching students, doing research, changing lives, saving lives, all the great things that colleges and universities do. And you're showing it as an opportunity to come join in that mission. I fear in most instances, the job posting turns into a modified version of the job description with all of the various tasks and responsibilities, which is great on the transparency side, and very, very light on this invitation side to be irresistible. You're going to want to apply. You're going to want to find out more about this. You're going to want to have a conversation with the people who wrote this ad. That's what you're wanting to do in there, and that really takes time and energy, and that takes, I think, leadership and education of your stakeholders to be able to be at a place to do that. So if you ask me, that's the must have, and that can come hopefully in ways that are unique. I don't want to suggest to you how you can be unique. Be unique. Show people why they should come work with you.
What about format? I once wrote a piece that proposed that every job posting should begin with a little précis up front, sort of a tease, if you will, that highlighted the key elements of the opportunity that made it irresistible, that differentiated it from other kinds of similar jobs at other places. obviously, ads are pretty standard. These days, they kind of all start with a description of what the tasks are, and then they talk about the requirements of what they want from a particular candidate in terms of skills, knowledge, and experience, and so forth. Do you have any sense that one kind of format or one way of shaping this value proposition that you're talking about works better than others?
I always, I mean, I think being more succinct than more wordy is always best. I think putting your a good summary up front is definitely kind of going back a few questions when we're talking about attention span. I think that's essential. Get everything out there that's important in a summarized, succinct fashion right from the get go. If you're going to come out and do a rock and roll show, you better come out with that first song and hit them hard. And you need to do that in a job posting like that. That's your opening song. Get it out there so people are going to continue reading. And I think part of the challenge is, I think over the past 25 years, we've gotten used to doing job postings on the internet. When you used to have to pay for space to do a job posting, people were a lot more succinct in what they were going to put in a print ad than they are in a digital ad. Now, you can go on from there however you'd like to go. I think the other essential part is a absolute call to action. What do you want this person to do? We would love to talk to you. Please send your resume here if this opportunity interests you. Why do we end with please send your resume here, please send your CV here, or send CVs here? Make it an invitation. Or if you're calling a friend to come over, you don't say, please show up at my house at 7:00 and here's the address. You say, hey, we'd love to have you over for dinner on a Saturday night at 7. Here's where you have to go. Like, this is an invitation. Remember, it's the other side of the resume coin. You want them to send a resume in, and then they want you to select their resume to talk to them. That's how this all works. So remembering you're really out there. This isn't some sort of casting call. This is an invitation to find your next great coworker. Treat it with the reverence that it deserves. And I think that for me, that call to action, along with the succinct part, those are really good practices. But if you want to put the entire job description further below, hey, if you're really interested, here's a copy of the job description. Great for transparency. That's absolutely fine if you want to do that. You don't necessarily have to. I do think the succinct ad shows a lot of confidence in the opportunity, and it should show a lot of clarity of thought, and it also shows a lot of commitment to finding the right person. I probably would lean in that direction if it was my preference, but that's me. I'm not sure that's an absolute.
I think it was Mark Twain who said when he wrote a letter to a friend once that he didn't have time to write a shorter letter. It's hard to be succinct. It takes a lot of time and knowledge about what you want to talk about. And therein, it seems to me, lies the challenge for a lot of recruiters. Oftentimes they're dealing with so many open recs, they don't have the time to sit down and think through what would make a good job posting. And to be fair, in some cases, they just haven't had the training. They don't have the skills to write a good ad. Now, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Recently, it's been suggested that ChatGPT might be the solution to this problem. Where do you come out on that?
Well, I think your question kind of previews what I think one would suspect based on my previous answers. Yeah, I mean, in this instance, I would ask the person, if you're putting an ad on a dating site and you're asking ChatGPT to do it, and you're okay with it, then maybe you want to do a job posting the same way. This is a personal relationship and trying to show off why you're unique. ChatGPT, we can talk in many different ways how it will change recruiting. Hard stop. But when it comes to these sorts of situations, if what's going to be more effective, which is my opinion, obviously, is a more personalized approach to show why the organization that you work for is unique, and the people you work with is unique, and its mission is unique. The idea that you're going to try to look at AI, which is going to take a whole bunch of data and try to come up with what is a best representative of it, to me makes me a little bit nervous that, hey, that's not bad for a first draft. If you're looking, hey, give me a succinct job posting for an assistant director of admissions. Okay, you have a first draft there. If you want to use it for that, go for it. I don't have any beef with it. But then how do you want to spice that up? I know my wife Elizabeth, if we use jarred tomato sauce, she doesn't leave it alone. I mean, it just doesn't stay straight out of the jar. There's a lot of additives that she throws in there. Maybe kind of look at it that way. You need to spice it up a bit. You need to make it you. You can't just use something that's straight out of the jar with it.
That's a great segue into what I think is often the soft underbelly of a lot of ads. And that is, you can have the right content. You can be making the right points about your value proposition, but the language that you use can be inadvertently off-putting. I mean, in my view, I believe the terms requirements and responsibilities are words only a CFO could love. I mean, they are really not the kind of word that would induce someone to say, boy, this is a place I really want to work. On the other hand, the information that's conveyed under those titles about what you're going to do and what kinds of capabilities you need to have to be successful in the job are incredibly important. So I think the language of an ad is almost as important as the content. What do you think?
Words have meaning, words have purpose, words have intention. But remember, when you're using words, particularly in a written format, you're losing some methods of communication where in a verbal format you don't have, which makes it much harder. So the language you use to kind of create your tone, which would be verbal, is going to be really important. If you can get a good tone out of a job ad, that job posting is going to be a hell of a lot more effective. Sorry, should not use bad language.
No worries.
But a heck of a lot more effective if you're getting that tone out of the written word. And I do think it shows a commitment to the spirit of the organization, the spirit of the team that you have when you are able to create that there. It also shows that if people are using something very similar and they all kind of look the same, if you're doing something that is reflective of the thought and the energy you put into it, I think that stands out among the crowd. And I think the only tool you have to do that is words. I would also, once again, though, posit, remember, you have to keep internal stakeholders also happy throughout this process.
Yeah.
And that's where I think you're somewhat limited in what you can and cannot do, because it's to the point of where people want to go with it.
Yeah. Well, listen, we've come to the end of our 30-minute show. I've certainly learned a lot in this conversation. So, Andy, thank you very much for that. But before we go, do you have any parting thoughts or insights you'd like to share with the audience?
I think I'm going to just come with a plain old simple and hammer home what I've been saying all along. Remember, recruiting is a two-way process. In the labor market that we sit in right now, you're very much being evaluated as you evaluate candidates, and you need to remember that. And the only thing I'm going to do is take, because at this point he is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, but take the advice of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar from the movie Airplane, where he says, you need to bust your buns. Gets accused of not playing defense so much and tells the kid to go back to his father and tell him that I've been busting my buns. Go out there and bust your buns, because I think if you're looking for great talent, as a recruiter, you can inspire your hiring managers to understand what you put into this process is what you're going to get out of it. And everybody's going to have to work hard to do that. And to me, that's what real leadership in this area looks like. And there's definitely no substitute for it right now.
Andy, thank you very much. This has been a very enjoyable session. As I said earlier, I've certainly learned a lot. So for all of you who've had a chance to watch the show live, and for those of you who will join us later on the recording, this has been Andy Hibel, the co-founder and chief operating officer at HigherEdJobs.com. Take a look at the site. It's rich with a lot of resources for both employers and job seekers. And thank you for joining us at RecAd Savvy. We'll see you during our next episode. Bye-bye now.